Case Study 3, What's in the Pudding? The basis of this case study is that we are to look at different ethical theories to decide if it is morally correct for a medical professional to give a dementia or psychosis patient medicine without their consent, typically to create a more peaceful outcome. Question 1. There is probably a central moral problem with this case study for every theory or idea of ethics you can look at. Starting with the social contract theory, which is the ethical theory that we should all live by a social contract. Basically, anyone who is free, equal, and rational agrees on a way to live that creates the best, most valuable society, creating the least amount of problems and makes everyone as happy as possible. With this theory, a lot of times you have to give up a little bit of your freedom to create an overall better outcome for everybody. That being said, the really big moral problem in this case regarding the healthcare workers giving dementia and or psychosis patients medicine without them knowing to hopefully have a more peaceful outcome and create less hassle. And thinking about the social contract theory, you have to think about being free, equal, and rational. And unless these patients are lucid, which is the state where a patient seems to have no effect or kind of exhibit no symptoms of having dementia or being a psychosis patient, kind of like their normal self before, their health kind of just started to deteriorate. Unless this is happening with patients that are not free, equal, or rational. Therefore, they couldn't really agree for them to be given this medicine for it to be okay because they can't. They're not free or equal or rational, mainly not rational. Another idea regarding this case study and its moral problems is the idea of virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is an idea in a sort of family of ethical theories that believes that when deciding a person's actions and kind of a sort of overall morality is that we need to look deeper into this person's character. We need to think about what we need to do to live a desirable life and what character traits we need to achieve that. All that being said, I think with this case study, many of us would agree that it does not show that good of character to take away a person's autonomy to make it easier on yourself. In this case, administering medicine without knowledge or consent could lead to a more peaceful outcome, and maybe that is the better option. But virtue ethics really goes by character. To my understanding, the central moral problem is that the medical professional administering the medicine does not have the best character, taking away the person's autonomy. But again, virtue ethics doesn't say anything about autonomy. It doesn't really specify what makes a good person. And have a good character. It kind of makes you think about a case-by-case basis and like each person going through each case and taking their personal experiences and gaining moral wisdom to assess each case-by-case basis. So basically, the more situations and life experiences you go through, the better you are and the more moral wisdom you have at deciding if these things are moral or they're not moral. The final theory I will be relating to this case study and stating its moral problem is the theory/idea of feminist ethics. The main idea of feminist ethics is that we need to do things that are morally good with care or compassion. We need to do them for the good reasons. We can't just do things just because they're right. That would not be morally correct, thinking about this theory. In this theory, it is kind of expected to put your loved ones first, unlike a lot of other theories. This theory is to push for the idea that women have valuable things to bring to the table aside as men. Not necessarily to make everyone equal, not thinking about, the whole theory as a whole and bringing everybody into it. That's kind of the basis of it and where it all started. Feminist ethics is kind of most strong when we are thinking about a mother doing the best she can and making sacrifices for her child, and that's how I kind of understood it. The main issue regarding this case study in feminist ethics would be the simple fact that these medical professionals are probably not doing this out of compassion and caring for their patient. They're probably doing it so they don't have to go through the hassle. Although it would be morally acceptable to administer the medicine without consent if these professionals were in fact doing it out of kindness of their hearts and truly care and true careness for the patients and want what is best for them. Question 2. I'm going to elaborate more on the social contract theory I talked about in my first question, and talking about them adopting the perspective of somebody thinking about that theory, what they would think and say. Again, social contract theory is the theory of all free, equal, and rational people agreeing on a kind of set of rules to come up with a better outcome and a better society, and everyone being as happy and best as they can be. The issue with this is that these patients diagnosed with dementia or psychosis cannot properly care for themselves. They can't think for themselves and cannot agree on a set of rules for everyone. These patients are kind of sick and as a result are being cared for in a facility. Definitely not the majority of people, nor equal or rational for that matter. To elaborate more, a key component in this theory when deciding if someone is in the moral community, which is anyone who is kind of allowed to believe in a certain way of life or a different ethical theory. Again, that main idea, or one of them for this theory, is being rational and self-interested. We already covered the rational part, but regarding the self-interested part, these patients are not able to care about their well-being and the agreement upon rules to improve their lives. Again, self-interested does not necessarily mean selfish. It just means kind of to want your life to be as good as possible and do what it takes. Again, these patients can't really do that because they're not rational. Someone adopting the perspective of the social contract theory would most likely agree that the problem in this case is that these patients are not a part of the moral community and cannot be, quote, free, equal, and rational. Question 3. My chosen theory provides an unsatisfactory response to the case study, quote, what's in the pudding, end quote. It is not able to give a clear answer. The only conclusion or answer I kind of came up with can be drawn is that these patients don't deserve the autonomy because they're not a part of the moral community, and therefore it is probably isn't morally wrong to give the patients medicine without consent or knowledge of given the medicine. Because if somebody adopting this theory, they're not part of the moral community and they not necessarily don't care, but don't think of them as something to dictate if an action they do to them is morally correct or morally incorrect, if that makes sense. Question 4. The question is it ethical to trick a patient that consented to the medication while they were lucid into taking the medication now that they are no longer lucid? Again, lucid being they don't have the effects of having dementia or having psychosis. It's they're like their self before they became sick. If we think about the social contract theory to start, when that person is lucid, we can call them free, equal, and rational. So it would not be ethical to not tell them about the medication they were being given. In this instance, if they're lucid, they are a part of the moral community, therefore they should know. As soon as those patients become not lucid, it changes the whole perspective, making it ethical to trick them because they are not a part of the moral community. Therefore, it would not be ethical. Or therefore, it would be ethical. Because they're not necessarily not ethical, but it wouldn't be not ethical because they're not a part of the moral community. Thinking about virtue ethics, it really depends if it is ethical or not, depending on the person. Again, because it all depends on the case-by-case basis and how much moral wisdom that person has. In virtue ethics, again, each conclusion is drawn and decision is made based on that person doing the action and their moral wisdom. They have to assess each situation and decide by a case-by-case basis, like I said, so it really comes down to that individual person and their moral wisdom. The last thing we could think about is feminist ethics. It would be ethical and only ethical if the person giving the medication to the patient tricks them if they did it with true compassion and caring for the patient and not just have less hassle for them individually to put them through less stress and have them have better health.